In the summer of 1966, the stage is set in Rome. We find Matteo engrossed in studying for an exam. His father's request to fetch a television barely registering in his thoughts. A palpable tension exists between father and son, differing opinions and aspirations driving a wedge between them. Matteo's father yearns for him to utilize his connections to climb the ladder of success, while Matteo resists this path, holding on to his own convictions. Amidst this familial discord, Nicola, Matteo's brother, takes on the task of placing the television atop their father's car. A peculiar exchange unfolds as their father trades a skeleton, a token of his goodwill, to provide something beneficial for Nicola's pursuit of medicine. The narrative shifts as Matteo and Nicola embark on a ride together, traversing the Italian landscape. This brotherly bonding is underscored by the backdrop of a carefree dance, a momentary respite from the undercurrents of their lives. Their rendezvous with friends paints a picture of impending change. Conversations about Matteo's upcoming departure to Norway post-exams hint at a pivotal juncture in their lives. Amidst this transition, the rhythm of the dance evolves, becoming a symphony of emotions that mirrors the intricate dynamics of human relationships. The story takes an unexpected turn as it transitions to the tranquil setting of Villa Quieta, an asylum. Here, the focus shifts to Matteo's interaction with a girl named Giorgia, a meeting that holds the promise of profound impact. Matteo's encounter with the asylum's doctor unveils his responsibility to care for Giorgia. Their interactions take on a gentle quality, with Matteo offering her experiences beyond the confines of the institution. A pivotal moment arises when Giorgia consumes something from a plant, prompting Matteo's swift intervention. His actions bear a semblance of genuine care, mirrored in the gift of a book of poems he offers to her. In an intimate tableau, Matteo reads the verses aloud to Giorgia, initiating a shared journey into the realm of words and emotions. However, the tranquility is disrupted as Giorgia abruptly departs, a near miss with the speeding vehicle sending ripples of anger through Matteo. Tensions flare, words exchanged in a heated argument that lays bare their vulnerabilities. The interplay of emotions and the depiction of interpersonal relationships form the heart of the narrative, while the evocative backdrop of 1960s Rome serves as a canvas against which these moments unfold. Through seemingly ordinary interactions, the story captures the essence of the human experience, painting a vivid tapestry of emotions and choices that shape lives. Matteo is puzzled, unsure of how to assist Giorgia. He attempts to seek guidance from a professor. The professor suggests that those with mental illnesses tend to engage in activities. Meanwhile, conflicts arise between Matteo's parents over trivial matters. Even Chica, their younger sister, is caught in the midst of their arguments. Matteo advises Chica not to rush into marriage, drawing from his own experiences. Chica and Matteo manage to momentarily interrupt their parents' dispute. A touch of eccentricity is evident in Matteo's father, to which his mother offers dissenting views. Despite these familial tensions, a strong family bond endures. Matteo, along with Nicola and their friends, ventures out for a night of leisure. Their anticipation centers on the arrival of a certain girl, Caddy. Nicola's modest dwelling, accompanied by chickens, serves as the backdrop for an unexpectedly romantic evening. Caddy is actually a Matteo and Caddy's interaction evolves into a more intimate connection, marked by a rendezvous. Returning to the asylum, Matteo's dedication to Giorgia remains steadfast. He endeavors to introduce her to the world beyond its confines, utilizing cameras, lights, and the garden to uplift her spirits. However, an inadvertent touch leads to an unintended slap, highlighting the importance of respecting personal boundaries. Developing the photographs of Giorgia, Matteo discovers scars on her head, revealing a haunting past of electric shocks. Undeterred, Matteo delves into the asylum's file room against the Watcher's advice, seeking insight into Giorgia's story. His journey leads him to her room, where he awakens her with a plan to liberate her from the detrimental effects of therapy. Nicola successfully passes the exam, a moment of achievement in his journey. The professor acknowledges his performance, mentioning that he could have awarded him an eye, but decided otherwise. He emphasizes the importance of sympathy in the context of assessment. Engaging in a conversation about Nicola's future plans, the professor offers practical advice. He suggests that leaving the country and exploring opportunities in Western nations, such as London and America, might be a wiser choice. This recommendation stems from a perception that Italy's current circumstances may not be conducive for favorable prospects. While on the road, they find themselves engaged in a reckless car race, with Carlos at the wheel. Soon after, Matteo checks on Giorgia, rousing her from sleep with the offer of coffee and the promise of a new destination. Giorgia points at something, perhaps an unspoken connection between them. Meanwhile, Nicola and his friends delve into discussions about potential employment opportunities abroad, fueled by economic statistics. Amidst these conversations, they spot Matteo and Giorgia departing, setting their plans in motion. Matteo and Nicola converse about their intentions, Nicola's friends inadvertently interfering by reminding Nicola of his responsibility to assist his brother. As Matteo shares more about Giorgia's experiences with electroshock therapy, the plan solidifies. They aim to reunite her with her original family home, a place of familiarity and hopefully solace. Embarking on a train journey, Giorgia finds comfort sleeping on Matteo's shoulder, an endearing sight that amuses Nicola. Their destination is a coastal town nestled in the Apennines, where they intend to facilitate Giorgia's reconnection with her family. Upon their arrival, Giorgia's presence is recognized by Vito, a villager. However, their hopes for a family reunion are met with an unexpected revelation. Giorgia's father moved to Ravenna long ago, leaving her without immediate family in the village. Intriguingly, Vito manages to coax words from Giorgia, breaking her silence. Vito then starts revealing snippets of Giorgia's life story. Her early loss of her mother, her unusual fixation on cleaning, and her enigmatic behavior remain shrouded in mystery. With plans to reach Ravenna, the group faces a setback as they realize the last bus has departed. Forced to spend the night, they remain in the village, awaiting the next morning's opportunity to continue their journey. Vito sets them to sleep in a haystack, and they prep Giorgia's bedding and reassure Giorgia of her safety. Nicola promises Giorgia will sleep in a real bed. As the night progresses, rain starts to fall, creating a soothing rhythm on the rooftops. Amidst this ambience, Matteo curiously delves into Giorgia's diary and examines her illustrations. To his surprise, Giorgia awakens and notices him engrossed in her personal thoughts and creations. Her sudden agitation prompts her to rush outside into the rain, prompting both Matteo and Nicola to chase after her. It's Nicola's tender and compassionate approach that manages to calm Giorgia, bringing a rare smile to her face. Matteo, on the other hand, internalizes his mixed feelings, but dismisses it with a casual remark. The following morning, they set their course for Ravenna. Upon arrival, they locate the house where Giorgia's father resides, engaged in the sale of various items. The interaction between Giorgia and her father, Saro, is complex. Despite Saro's attempt to embrace her, Giorgia's discomfort is palpable. It becomes evident that Saro provides significant financial support to ensure Giorgia's treatment and keep her separated from his new family. Saro's intention is to return Giorgia to the clinic, a decision that sparks a debate. Matteo and Nicola advocate for her to stay with her father, believing it to be the best option. However, Saro disagrees, citing complications that may arise. A heated argument ensues, with Matteo and Saro clashing over Giorgia's well-being. Tensions escalate to the point of a physical altercation, only subdued by the intervention of Nicola and Giorgia themselves, who step in to restrain the confrontational men. With Saro's rejection of Giorgia, Nicola and Matteo are faced with a tough decision about what to do next. Matteo's temper and tendency toward violence add to the challenge. To take Giorgia's mind off things, they head to a sports bar, where people are watching a football match. Nicola tries to cheer her up, while Matteo tends to provoke her. Cheering for the opposing team leads to some trouble with the fans. They change the scene by going to the coast, where Nicola and Matteo play around, showing their close bond. As their journey continues, they board another train heading to Margara. However, a new issue arises, leading Nicola to leave temporarily. During this time, Giorgia and Matteo find themselves spending time together at a cafe, attempting to communicate through sign language. Surprisingly, their interactions start to become more comfortable and understanding, and Matteo even teaches Giorgia how to use a jukebox to play her favorite song. Their shared glances hold a newfound depth of connection. In a departure from their earlier tensions, Matteo seems to be gaining insight into Giorgia's world. The dynamic between them begins to shift positively. Meanwhile, Nicola talks to Giovanna for advice regarding Giorgia's situation. Giovanna suggests either returning her to the asylum or sending her back to her father. When Nicola returns and shares this news with Giorgia, it marks a significant moment of decision. Nicola cleverly asks Giorgia to go buy something, creating an opportunity for the brothers to talk privately. They discuss the possibility of taking her to Gorizia, a better choice of hospital in Sicily. However, a turn of events complicates matters. Despite successfully buying ice cream, Giorgia is unable to comprehend the vendor's mention of her change. This confusion attracts the attention of two policemen, who, seeing her acting strangely without identification, decide to take her to the police station. As they begin to take her away, Matteo notices the situation and rushes to intervene. Facing an uncertain situation, the brothers find themselves at a crossroads. Nicola believes that Giorgia will likely be taken back to the asylum, prompting him to make the decision to carry on with their journey. They spend the night at the train station, and the next morning something unexpected occurs. Matteo boards a train, choosing to return to Rome. He confesses to Nicola that he failed his exam, a revelation that leaves Nicola both frustrated and disappointed. As Matteo departs, Nicola, overwhelmed with anger and emotion, closes the door behind him, allowing the train to leave. Nicola's reaction leads him to make a bold decision. He rushes to an army office, fueled by his determination to join the army immediately. However, the guard's skepticism and questioning of his abilities prompt Nicola to rethink his impulsive choice. Disheartened, he continues his journey alone, his hair now overgrown and his circumstances transformed. In a letter sent to Matteo, Nicola seeks information about Carlos and Berto, individuals he was promised to meet, but has yet to encounter. He crosses paths with Martin, an American attempting to escape being drafted for the Vietnam War. In a parallel storyline, Matteo enlists in the army, setting in motion a series of events that will shape their individual paths. Later on, Nicola's journey takes an unconventional turn as he joins a hippie gang, immersing himself in their free-spirited lifestyle. Amidst literary discussions and uninhibited dancing, Nicola experiences a liberated atmosphere, even participating in spontaneous nude gatherings. However, he eventually decides to part ways with the hippie troupe and continues his travels alone. Despite the distance, he remains connected to Matteo through heartfelt letters, each missive carrying his thoughts and experiences. These letters find their way to Matteo, who is now navigating the rigors of military camp. Matteo's challenges intensify as his temper becomes increasingly volatile. A prank tests his patience, nearly resulting in a physical altercation with a fellow cadet. Meanwhile, Nicola's journey takes him to Norway, where he finds himself penniless and in need of employment. He secures a job as a lumberjack, where he crosses paths with a Norwegian woman who happens to be his co-worker. As Nicola's story unfolds, Matteo's military training becomes more arduous, exposing him to extreme conditions that push his limits. Despite the distance, Nicola finds solace in solitude, engaging in conversations with the Norwegian woman. Her company offers a sense of companionship, and she extends an invitation for Nicola to visit her house located by a massive lake. The Norwegian woman generously welcomes him to stay in her home, providing a safe haven for him. Back in the military camp, Matteo faces the harsh realities of his training. Amidst the stringent military measures, he makes a decision to step out of line, opting not to participate in a planned activity. In Norway, Nicola and the Norwegian girl grow closer and start dating. Nicola writes to Matteo again, sharing his thoughts about how they could have helped Georgia. Back in the military camp, Matteo becomes somewhat friendly with a cadet who previously pranked him, named Luigi. Things change in Norway when a flood hits Florence, causing a lot of damage. The Norwegian girl wakes Nicola up to tell him about the tragedy, and suggests that he might want to help with the relief efforts. Nicola decides to return to Italy to assist with the disaster relief. This is how he ends up meeting Matteo again. Unexpectedly, a group of soldiers arrives, including Matteo. When he spots Nicola, he breaks the rules and calls out to his brother, happy to see him after so long. This marks their reunion amid the chaotic situation. They thread through the water to look for survivors and provide aid and look for anything valuable, like books in the historic library. Nicola drops the idea of going to university again to study medicine, and instead is satisfied with the life he's found. He then meets Carlos and Berto again. There, Nicola meets Gilia, a university student who plays piano. An older man starts to give away bread and wine to the soldiers and volunteers. Gilia catches Nicola's attention, and everyone else's, with her piano playing. Nicola walks closer to her while she plays with passion. They get to know each other later on, surrounding the bonfire. Gilia says she majors in math and gives them some puzzles. Nicola explains the answer using Gilia's fingers, but is not the answer. They spend more time together, and it's obvious that Gilia has an interest in Nicola too. Nicola and Gilia's relationship grows stronger, and they become a couple. In 1968, they join a protest together in Turin. They get arrested along with other students by the police. Later, Nicola goes back to college and hangs out with a diverse group of friends, including working-class folks, professors, union members, and students. He stays with Gilia, but they decide not to get married. There's a scene where Gilia visits Nicola's place, and things get pretty intense. Fast forward to 1974, Turin is hit by major protests and riots. The military responds with force and tear gas. Nicola and Gilia are caught in the chaos, and since Gilia claims she is pregnant, they look for safety. They find shelter in a church, and even though Nicola doubts the pregnancy excuse, it turns out to be true when she smiles. Meanwhile, Matteo has left the army and joined the riot police in the same city in Turin, leading the unit. Matteo's team faces angry protesters who throw objects at them, and things escalate when their friend Luigi is attacked. The incident deeply affects Matteo, leading to his emotional breakdown and contributing to his depression and temper. Nicola tries to comfort him, and they share a hug. Due to his behavior during the protest, Matteo is transferred to Bologna. He remains unapologetic about injuring someone during the protest. Nicola worries about Matteo's defiance and tries to lift his spirits by inviting him to his place, knowing Nicola's ability to calm people. In Nicola's apartment, Matteo meets Gilia for the first time. The conversation turns tense when Matteo defends his police unit, while Gilia argues that the police are on the wrong side. Despite the heated disagreement, the brothers find humor in their differences. Later, Nicola shares the news that they are expecting a baby girl named Sarah. Eventually, Sarah is born, which brings more joy to the couple. Matteo and Nicola's parents visit, but their mother is not in favor of the situation, since Sarah was born outside of marriage. Their father, on the other hand, has a more progressive view, acknowledging that marriage is not as common nowadays. During the visit, they go to Nicola's home, where Giulia welcomes them, along with Sarah. The grandparents are thrilled and bring various gifts for the newborn. They are both in disbelief that they are now grandparents, and debate whom Sarah looks more like. Meanwhile, Nicola is involved in a court trial, as a guide and doctor for patients who are testifying against an abusive psychiatrist. Giulia says this is the first time in the world that cases like this have actually got to court. Later, Nicola is with the patients. He uses his unique ability to help these patients, who have mental illnesses, understand and communicate during the trial. Despite their challenges, the court proceeds, and the patients are sworn in. However, due to their mental state, their claims are weakened, and they argue that their words are being manipulated. The patients take turns describing their horrifying experiences while under the care of the psychiatrist in the asylum. Their testimonies reveal the brutal practice of electroconvulsive therapy, which was common during that era. They continue to detail the torture and mistreatment they endured. Meanwhile, Nicola's mother searches for him, and he enters the courtroom as the psychiatrist is being tried. Later, one of the judges speaks to a patient who has lost the ability to speak due to the mistreatment. The psychiatrist attempts to defend his actions, but another patient becomes agitated. Nicola steps in to support the patient, providing a defense for their emotional reaction. The trial concludes, with the verdict still pending. Nicola and his mother hope for a harsher sentence for the doctor. Later, Nicola delivers unfortunate news to his father, revealing X-ray results from the hospital that the father kept hidden. While Nicola compiles his trial report, his father helps by typing it. The father expresses interest in staying and earning money by repairing machines, while Nicola continues dictating. As their parents play cards, the father expresses a desire to remarry his wife, and Nicola listens nearby. Meanwhile, Matteo is now in Sicily after being transferred from Bologna. He talks to the commissioner, preferring a dormitory over a house. Matteo remains focused on his work with the police, obediently following orders. When a crime occurs, he photographs the crime scene and assists in investigating a murder alongside the methodical commissioner. Back in the courtroom, the judge delivers the verdict, declaring the psychiatrist guilty and sentencing him to imprisonment. This brings happiness to Nicola and the patients who sought justice. Later, their father stays in the apartment and helps paint, while Giulia watches. Curious about the piano, he asks Giulia why she never plays it. Giulia admits she's not as skilled as before, but her father suggests she plays for herself. Encouraged, Giulia starts playing, but she stumbles due to mistakes. Despite this, her father encourages her to continue. As Giulia plays, Nicola arrives, and his father signals him not to interrupt. Later, Nicola and his father go for a drive, during which his father provides advice and insight into his relationship with Giulia. Subsequently, in the same courthouse, another individual faces trial for environmental violations in Italy. Giovanna, Nicola, and Carlos share a dinner together. Nicola confides in Carlos about his father's health, but Carlos encourages him to hold on to hope for his father's recovery, believing that his father can sense it as well. Carlos departs for his flight to London, and before he leaves, Nicola apologizes for his earlier rudeness. They reconcile and part on good terms. Later, the father confides in Giovanna about his health condition, emphasizing the importance of keeping it confidential. He expresses concern not for himself, but for Matteo, who has never sought help for his own condition. Despite his health challenges, the father remains positive and urges Giovanna to adopt the same attitude. However, Giovanna has her own marital issues to deal with. In Sicily in 1977, Matteo crosses paths with a photographer named Mirla by the pier. He shares his insight on reading people based solely on their appearance and actions, encouraging her to look beyond the surface. This interaction leads to a personal connection between Matteo and Mirla. Matteo admits his expertise in libraries and his talent for understanding people. He recommends a library in Rome. As he prepares to depart, Matteo provides Mirla with a false name, Nicola. Soon after, his colleague arrives, informing him of a situation involving a man who has been attacked. They need to attend to the matter, prompting Matteo to leave Mirla behind. In the following years, Sarah grows up, and Nicola becomes a psychiatrist with a strong determination to eradicate mistreatment in mental health institutions. However, tension emerges between Nicola and Giulia. Giulia expresses her desire to quit her job due to exhaustion, and she has even lost interest in playing the piano, having sold it. Giulia's perspective starts to shift towards radicalization. She voices her frustration with Nicola, who seems more focused on his hospital work. Their arguments are interrupted by Sarah, prompting a pause in their disagreement. Nicola writes a letter to Carlo, discussing Giulia's evolving attitude and her work at the institution. At the same night, Giulia gradually warms up to Nicola, and they eventually reconnect intimately. Nicola heads an inspection of the mental health institution, as part of the ministry's efforts to curb the allegations. The institution's director claims that patients are treated well, but Nicola is skeptical. As they explore the premises, they uncover a hidden basement. The director becomes agitated, clearly worried about what they might find. Upon opening the basement, they discover a group of patients in deplorable conditions, tied up and suffering. Among them is Giorgia, who has been severely beaten and is unresponsive. Nicola quickly releases her, but Giorgia reacts violently to touch and remains fearful. Nicola brings Giorgia to his office and tries to connect with her, reminding her of their past trip. However, Giorgia doesn't respond. Interestingly, she reacts to the smell of oranges, but instead of consuming them, she waters the plants, seemingly concerned for their well-being. Back in Sicily, while photographing a gruesome crime scene, Matteo gets mad at the cops smoking, and his anger escalates. Due to his uncontrollable anger, Matteo leaves the city and returns to Rome without visiting his mother. Meanwhile, Giulia becomes involved in a secret Red Brigade cell. One night, she leaves Nicola and Sarah behind, and disappears into the world of underground. Years later, in 1983, Matteo walks into the same library he recommended earlier, and encounters Mirla once again. They rekindle their love and share an intimate evening in a car. However, he later distances himself from her. Mirla meets with Matteo to share important news, but he reacts harshly and pushes her away. On New Year's Eve, Matteo finally decides to visit his mother. The whole family gathers to celebrate, but instead of waiting for the customary toasts, Matteo abruptly leaves. At midnight, he tragically the balcony of his apartment and takes his own. The family is shattered by the tragedy. Nicola's mother quits her teaching job and remains in solitude in Rome, no longer motivated. Nicola, tormented by the belief that he could have saved Matteo, is determined not to repeat the same mistake. He takes action by arranging for the capture of Giulia to prevent further harm. She receives a 17-year jail sentence. During her time in prison, Nicola visits Giulia and proposes to her, but his proposal is met with rejection. 9 years later, Nicola comes across a photograph of Matteo taken by Mirla. Encouraged by Giorgia, he reluctantly agrees to meet Mirla. Their meeting reveals that Matteo is the father of Mirla's son, Andrea. Nicola shares this revelation with his mother, and they visit Mirla and the boy on Stromboli Island. Nicola's mother finds renewed purpose and decides to stay with Mirla and her grandson. In 1995, Nicola and his friends embark on the reconstruction of an old villa in Tuscany. Giulia, now out of jail, encounters Francesca, but keeps her distance from Sarah, observing her from afar. Meanwhile, Sarah, in her 20s, grapples with the consequences of her mother's choices. She decides to move to Rome for her studies, and gets engaged to Mimmo. During this period, Nicola learns of his mother's passing, and travels to Stromboli to pay his respects to Mirla. 5 years later, Nicola and Mirla find love and solace in each other. Sarah, now strong and content, is encouraged by Nicola to reconcile with her mother. Giulia, craving love, embraces Sarah, yet remains hesitant to fully open up. In 2003, the film concludes with Matteo's son, Andrea, making a visit to Norway, particularly North Cape. This is the very destination that Matteo and Nicola set out to reach at the start of the movie, but were unable to complete their journey.